So, as I stated in the introduction, traumatic injuries and bleeding and shock are one of the leading causes of deaths in young people. Um, and if there's severe bleeding, bleeding that is not controlled by a gauze pad, or the wound is so egregious, like in an avulsion, um, we need to slow that blood down. The first thing we can do is raise that limb up, put the person down, raise the limb up if it's on an arm or a leg. Um, so we want to apply direct pressure. We want to get the gauze pad on there. And if blood is pooling or spurting out, we need to apply a tourniquet. Tourniquet is a device placed around an arm or a leg to constrict blood vessels and stop blood flow to a wound. Um, so if you're in childcare, or lifeguard, or you're in an industry, whether that's the fishing industry or at Boeing, we should have professional tourniquets in our first aid kit. Accidents happen. If we don't have a tourniquet, we could use a belt or something we could tie around the person and tighten to slow that blood loss. And somebody should be calling 911. One of the things uh, I talked about in the beginning of the year is the Boston bombing, a horrific event in our nation's history, a terroristic event. Numerous people were injured and lost limbs, but are here today because bystanders, restaurant workers, police, EMS applied tourniquets and stopped the loss of blood. So a tourniquet may be used when life-threatening bleeding exists and the standard first aid procedures fail or are not practical. Life-threatening severe bleeding that cannot be controlled using direct pressure. A physical location that makes it impossible to apply direct pressure to control the bleeding, like in a car accident, a person stuck. Multiple people with life-threatening injuries who need care. So we're thinking a terroristic event, warfare, or again, a car accident. A scene that is or becomes unsafe, and you have to move the person quickly. Do what you have to do. We have to stop that bleeding and get that person to a safe location. So a tourniquet is, quite frankly, almost the last resort. So let's watch a little video on that.
A tourniquet should be used, if available, when life-threatening bleeding exists on an arm or leg, and standard first aid procedures fail or are not practical.
Apply pressure here. All right, I got it.
Tourniquets can be painful. If you must apply a tourniquet, make sure the person understands the reason for the tourniquet and warn the person that it might be painful. To begin, place the tourniquet around the limb, approximately 2 inches above the wound. Avoid placing the tourniquet over a joint. Route the tag end of the strap through the buckle, or attach the quick connect buckle and pull the strap until tight around the arm or leg.
Then they twist it.
Tighten the tourniquet by twisting the rod until the flow of bright red blood stops. Then, secure the rod in place using the clip or holder. If bleeding restarts or the tourniquet is ineffective, apply more pressure and tighten tourniquet, but do not remove it. Note and record the time that you applied the tourniquet, and give this information to EMS personnel when they arrive. Continue to care for the person. Monitor for shock until EMS personnel arrive.
So, tourniquets are meant for limbs. They can be anywhere up the limb. A hemostatic dressing is for the neck and your axial part of your body. That would be your neck, your thoracic area, or your abdominal cavity. And it's a dressing treated with a substance that speeds clot formation, helps get those proteins to bind. The hemostatic dressing is applied at the site of the bleeding, possibly inside the wound. Hemostatic dressings are used along with direct pressure. So definitely you want to hold that pressure in. So there are new science that came out within the last 20 years. Definitely, again, if you're in industry, law enforcement, warfare, that's something you should be in your first aid kit. And the paramedics and EMTs should carry this as well. Hemostatic dressing should only be used to control life-threatening bleeding when standard first aid procedures either fail or are not practical. Life-threatening bleeding on parts of the body where a tourniquet cannot be applied, such as your neck or torso. life-threatening bleeding from an open wound on an arm or a leg if a tourniquet is ineffective. So another weird thing, we'll just go throw this in here, is nosebleeds. They're pretty common from getting hit in the face, exposure to dry or cold, high blood pressure, use of certain medications such as blood thinners. And we should hold the nose and actually lean the person forward, and preferably not over your mother's or aunt's rug. That's why they would told you to hold it back, because they don't want the blood on the floor. But we need to stop the bleeding. So to care for a nosebleed, have the person sit leaning slightly forward, pinch the nostrils together until the bleeding stops. If the nosebleed is severe, call 911 or the designated emergency number. Continue to pinch the nostrils together. So those are our short little lessons on treating open wounds. And again, make sure you always wear gloves and your mask when caring for someone, especially if you don't know them. Thank you. Good luck.